This is episode number 45 with Dalip Shekhawat, an educator from Manitoba, Canada, who is no stranger to challenge. Last May, Dalip reached the summit of Mount Everest to raise funds for the Amand School in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and is now preparing for his next challenge that's tied into raising funds for the Wounded Warriors of Canada, where he will run a combined distance of more than 500 kilometers, that's 311 miles, over different terrain and different climates and at different altitudes to stimulate the physical adversities these warriors faced. Welcome to the Neuroscience Meets Social and Emotional Learning podcast. My name is Andrea Samadi. I'm a former educator who's been fascinated with understanding the science behind high performance strategies in schools, sports, and the workplace for the past 20 years. Each week, we bring you an expert who's risen to the top of their field with specific strategies or ideas that you can implement immediately, whether you're a teacher or student in the classroom or working in the corporate world, to take your results to the next level. Welcome, Dalip.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much for being here. Dalip, I want to first of all thank my friend Cheryl Watt. She lives in Winnipeg, and she sent me over your story. And when I first read about your challenge to summit Mount Everest to raise funds for the St. Amand Center with people with developmental disabilities, I knew I needed to reach out immediately to you. And now I find out you're in the middle of raising funds for another just as equally important challenge for the Wounded Warriors. That's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here on Daylight Savings Time Change Day, so bright and early on Sunday morning.
Yeah, I got up so early. That's fine, yeah.
The early start is a good start, right?
Yeah.
So Dalip, I'm going to get right into the questions for you.
Okay.
I'm an avid hiker here in Arizona. We've got quite a few mountains, but I can never imagine hiking up Mount Everest. What was behind the drive to motivate you to actually summit Mount Everest and then your next challenge to run more than 500 kilometers?
Okay, Andrea, that's a great question. Actually, there are two big drives behind that. One, it comes from my deep sense of family duty and respect for my parents. And the second one is we live in a very soft environment, which is full of easy access and effortless entertainment. We aren't prepared for any hardships or adversities. When things get tough, we quit or we play victim to it. I chose to fight back to my failures, disappointments, and discriminations by channelizing this negativity to fuel my passion. And that's why I chose to go for bigger goals.
Wow. Well, those are huge goals. And I actually have heard about people hiking Everest, but I never really dove deep into it until I was reading your story. How did you prepare for Everest? So I read that you've climbed more than 15 other mountains, and I just wonder, where are they? Because the last time I looked, I only saw 2 mountains in Manitoba.
Yeah, we have a garbage hill here, which is not actually a mountain. So yeah, as far as my preparation goes, it took me over 15 years of preparation, planning, and training. I followed a strict progressive training plan and a spiritual regime to prepare myself. And my training was kind of dissected into a very cellular level details to prepare myself physically and mentally. So I did long days. I went on multi-day hikes. I did ultra running. I emptied my tank. I trained until I was exhausted. I did dehydration training to build more tolerance for thirst. I did cold training. Manitoba winters are great for that. I joined Winter Ultra and did winter camping. I did some hunger tolerance training because there you have to go without food for more than 36 hours. I did hypoxic training where I had Go for Fit masks to increase my lung capacity and increase my diaphragm strength. I also did weight training. I carried 30 kilos of backpack to get used to that weight, which I have to carry up to Camp 3, and then carry my oxygen cylinder up there. And I also trained for sleep deprivation training because you don't sleep at that altitude. It's so dysregulated there. And I also trained cardio and endurance training to prepare for physically, for the Everest. But beside that, I trained spiritually too. I meditated over years to visualize and experience the powerful atmosphere and consciousness of Himalayas. And I treated this climb as a pilgrimage to Mother Goddess of all mountain. I wanted to feel my oneness with the entirety. So all this, summed up, and I uh, I've been climbing I had been climbing for 15 years. Most of my climbs are in India after doing my basic and advanced mountaineering courses. I climbed in Karakoram and Janskar ranges in Himalayas, northern India. I did Shatidhar Peak, Friendship Peak, Stoke Kangri, Mount Kun, Peak 40. I climbed in Canadian Rockies. I did Mount Belfour, Mount Victoria, Mount Olive. I went on Wapta Traverse. Also, I climbed in Mexico, where I did Mount Orizaba, Mount Ista, Mount Malinki, Mount Toluca, and I also went on Iceland Trail. Beside that, I had indicators for me to tell me that I'm ready for Everest, where I did 100 miles to indicate that I'm ready for Everest. So that's all preparation you have to go through, and it was progressive. Started from like 3 years, and then it narrowed down to more intense. The last 6 months before my climb, it was almost like I was so fixated on doing push-ups, core training, because I had one thing in my head, that I had to go to the summit and come back safe.
Wow. Wow, I got goosebumps at all of that, because I can't imagine. And you did all this training while you were working at the St. Amand School? Is this?
Yes. So yeah, add to that, I used to get up at 4 a.m. and I still get up at 4 a.m. And I start my day with meditation. Then I do my strength building training. And during my lunch hour at work, I do stair climbing and I go for long walks. And in the evening, I do my main variable high intensity training. So that's how you have to struggle between time, energy, and money. Those are the big factors, and we all have same 24 hours. So that's how I managed it.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's a good strategy to get up early. It's a brilliant strategy. But as I was getting closer to the top, I was surprised at myself, because I said to my husband, if you don't feel well, just let me know, because we can turn back. And then it was me that I was shocked that I had a hard time with the low oxygen. So I just wonder, as you were talking, was there anything that surprised you about how you acclimated, or was everything, did everybody understand what was happening to their bodies?
I think Sherpas are really good at catching pulse. So because how this high altitude affects you is like your brain has three regions: cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. So first part, which is the new brain, which is cerebrum, which is affected, and your speech become delayed. You slow down, you're confused. So that is the first sign that you're getting that high altitude sickness. And the second is when your movement is like kind of zombie.
Mm-hmm.
You walk like you're drunk.
Yeah,
and the third stage is you start hallucinating. So I was at second stage when I got down to Camp 2. So then last stage is hallucination. Then then death is inevitable. So I was very close. That my training was perfect, I would say, to make me back safe. Yeah.
Now, what physical toll did this take on your body? And as I looked at it, is it true that it takes 2 months to actually hike to the summit? Can you take me through the start to the finish of the summit and then coming back?
The climb, we face so many dangers like avalanches, earthquakes, which account for 40% of death on Mount Everest. There are frostbite, kumbu cough, extreme cold and strong winds. There's high altitude sickness, which causes cerebral and pulmonary edema, cardiac arrest, muscle wasting, crevasses, traffic jam, gear failure, dysfunctional sleep. And it also depends on individual training, how you prepare for it. And believe me, anything can go wrong, and it will go wrong. So as far as I'm concerned, I lost 15 pounds, and I felt very weak after the climb. I felt my toes were numb for months, and I had a serious frostbite on two of my toes, which I had to get them removed. So it takes a big toll on your body, because going through those extremes, which you cannot prepare, makes it little hard on body.
Wow, what a sacrifice for this. Dalip, take me through the hike from start to finish.
Okay, Andrea. Yes, it took us almost 2 months to climb Mount Everest, and the favorite climbing season is April and May. So after landing in Kathmandu in April, we rested for 2 days. We went out on a city tour. We visited the famous temple, Pashupatinath temple. We met other team members. We got our gear check, and we got our documents verified. After that, we were flown to Lukla, which is at 2,860 meters, which is the busiest domestic airport during that season. This area has no road. They have tiny planes, a lot of turbulence, and the shortest runway makes the whole ride so scary. After eating the breakfast at the airport, we began our hike to Everest Base Camp. It is the most famous trek in the world, with stunning sceneries, watching sunrise over Mount Everest from Kalapathar, crossing those epic suspension bridges, monasteries, tea houses, yaks, beautiful streams, and meeting amazing people makes the whole journey legendary. The round trip to Everest Base Camp takes almost 12 days, and it's 130 kilometers in total. After hiking for 7 days, we arrived at Everest Base Camp, which is at 5,400 meters. We were actually at the far end of the camp to avoid the regular hikers. Everest Base Camp is stretched in 3 kilometers of area, and it becomes a tent city during that season with 381 climbers and 600 support staff. You can imagine how crowded it gets. So we acclimatized for a week, and then we got 2 days of glacier training where we learned to cross the ladders. We learned how to jamar, we learned how to rappel, and we did some training on oxygen mask and switching oxygen cylinders. So Everest Base Camp runs parallel to Khumbu Glacier. And Khumbu Glacier is a melting river of ice. It starts at 7,600 meters at Lhotse face, and it runs down to Everest Base Camp. But because of climate change, its size is getting lesser. The glacier is melting. But its steepest part is 2.5 miles, which is known as Khumbu Ice Fall. It is the first hurdle which the climbers face. It is like a popcorn field. It is a ginormous chambers of ice blocks, which are known as seracs. It's like walking in a horror chamber. Any serac can crack anytime. A crevasse can open near you. The priority is to cross it as soon as possible. And 1/3 of the total casualties which happened here are in this region. And this year we had, like last year, we had 25 ladders to cross. It is maintained by Khumbu Ice Fall doctors. Before we step onto the mountains, Sherpas do a prayer ceremony where they invite a monk, and we bring all our gears and equipments to get the blessings from mountain god and goddess. After the prayer ceremony, we begin our acclimatization rotations. Again, it depends on agency to agency and climber to climber how many times they want to go. It's recommended that we go twice for acclimatization. And what happens during acclimatization is we go up to Camp 1, we sleep one night. We go to Camp 2, we sleep one night. We touch Camp 3, we come back, sleep at Camp 2, and come back to base camp. So that's basically to acclimatize your body. And what happens during that is body makes red blood cells, and the muscles secrete some enzymes which helps in oxygen absorption. If the climber are not acclimatized, they are pushing too hard, too fast, they will suffer from high altitude sickness. And I mentioned in the past that pulmonary edema and cerebral edema are the main cause of high altitude sickness. So we reached Camp 2 after 6 hours of grueling climb. Believe me, it was very steep to cross through Khumbu icefall, and it was scary. At the time, we were always worried that something might happen, avalanche might come, because in 2014-15, that's where the Sherpas got buried when the west shoulder came down on the top left of the glacier. It is a very Camp 1 is at 6,100 meters, which is a vast flat area of endless snow with deep crevasses. We could hear the murmuring and cracking sounds under our tents at night, and frequent avalanches and hidden crevasses were everywhere in this area. So it was a very scary night when we were there the first time. Camp 2 is not far from Camp 1. It's only 300 meters, but there are ice steps which we have to cross, and each ice step is 5 to 10 meters high, and we are carrying full load. And in the sun, it becomes so hot that you walk like a zombie. It slows you down, and it's a silent valley, so it heats up pretty fast. So after walking for 4 hours of heat, we reached Camp 2, which is on the left foot of the Lhotse face. And this is like one of the last resting phase when we go for summit push, where helicopters evacuation can be done. And this place becomes so stunning in the evening. All the clouds roll over from the lower ranges and but still it's very cracked and very scary. There are lots of glaciers openings, and one of our toilet was also on a crevasse in this area. After spending the restless nights, we hiked up to Camp 3. We touched the Camp 3, and we came back to base camp. Camp 3 is at 7,300 meters. So every year it varies depending on amount of snow present. It was halfway at the Lhotse face. It has icy slopes, and it is a 1,200 meter steep, treacherous climb. We need brute Jamar strength to pull ourselves up with a full load to check our stamina. The camp here was like eagle's nest placed right out on the wall. We use supplementary oxygen beyond Camp 3. So after acclimatization rotations, our bodies were fully ready for the summit push. And we got rest for a week to recover and replenish. So some people go to Kathmandu, some people go to the lower camps just to recover and be ready for the summit push. But in 2019, unfortunately, we got hit by the cyclone Fani when we were expecting summit window, and that was during May 4th and 5th. And these cyclones were with strong winds of Hurricane 4 category winds, which destroyed the higher camps and dumped a lot of snow up on the higher camps. So because of that, all the mountaineering activities were abandoned, and which delayed all the route opening, which delayed all the supply of food to higher camps, and then they have to go rebuild the camp. So we missed the first weather window because of that. So in 29, because of Cyclone Fani, we had only 4 sporadic summit days as compared to straight week. The first short window was 16 hours, which was on 15th and 16th when we submitted. And the second was between 22nd and 24th of May. So we got a good news at the base camp that a calm summit wind is on 15th and 16th, and it's only a very short 16-hour window. And it's a challenge if we can do it. But, my Sherpa was ready and he knew my strength. So we were very thrilled and excited to try our luck. We started our final push on 12th of midnight. We moved straight to Camp 2 and we relaxed for one night and reached Camp 3 on 14th evening. After resting for a few hours, around 3 a.m. on 15th, we started climbing in dark and freezing icy slopes. We continued for over 9 hours and reached Camp 4, which is known as South Col, at the altitude of 7,950 meters. On the way, we crossed Yellow Band and Geneva Spur. After reaching Camp 4, so Camp 4 is basically known as death zone. You are at 1/3 of atmospheric oxygen level there, and we were at the edge of atmosphere and stratosphere. We could view Kanchenjunga and Makalu from that distance, and we pitched our tents by 4 o'clock. We had a few hours to rest before we do our final push. And I couldn't think that there was a real risk of death on this final push. At about 8:30 p.m., we began our climbing. I knew my fitness and acclimatization will be tested during 900-meter ascent to the highest point on the planet. The wall towards the summit was steep, icy, and desperately cold. It took us almost 9 hours to reach the summit, which was pretty fast as compared to, on an average, like it takes 12 hours. So we reached balcony around 1:30 a.m. My oxygen cylinder was switched by the Sherpa. And then we reached the ridge around 3 a.m. But then before we reached the summit, there was a final hurdle, which was the knife ridge, which was very steep and frightful because there was a sheer drop on both sides. And in the middle was Hillary Step, which is a 40 feet high wall of rock and ice, which we have to climb. So we did that. And finally, we reached a white ridge, and that was the summit. So around 5 o'clock, we saw the beautiful sunrise that happened already around 4-ish, and we were at the summit. We took pictures with the flag, and it was dangerously cold, I would say. We stayed only for 5 minutes, and we started descending because my Sherpa knew that the winds will pick up if we stay longer, and it was a very short window. So in a single push, we descended to Camp 2, which is at 6,500 meters. So around 10:30 p.m., we reached Camp 2. I was so tired, dehydrated, exhausted. I was walking like a zombie at that point. I know that I have reached my last point where I'm totally exhausted and I can collapse anytime. But I was in safe hands. I was in the tents now, and I fell into deeper sleep after eating hot food. And finally, I could believe and say that I became Everest summiter. Oh. Next morning, we descended back to base camp. We took helicopter ride back to Kathmandu. My frozen toes were examined at Kathmandu, and it was diagnosed as frostbite. And unfortunately, I had to lose 2 of them. I accept this loss as my gain and a souvenir from the Everest to remember dangers the mighty mountain can offer.
Wow, what a trip. When I read that 2 out of 6 of those you were hiking with didn't make it back down, I wondered how on the earth could you prepare for that? What mental strength did you have to develop to handle that? Was there any point that you thought this is not worth it? You have a family at home to come home to. Did you ever think about turning back?
I think to prepare for this kind of situation, you reach summit after 4 days of grueling and freezing climb. It was like a dream come true. There is no way to prepare or simulate the power of 36 hours in death zone, where you earn a decade of glory and wisdom while being exhausted, dehydrated, sleep deprived, hungry, suffering from high altitude sickness. Your body encountered disease climbers, and your body is dying cell by cell and minute by minute as long as you stay in the death zone. So it's hard to say that there is a way to prepare for it. You have to go there and experience it. That's the only way I can say, to prepare. And I had flashbacks initially when I got back. And through meditation, I healed myself. And as long as my family is concerned, I detached myself emotionally from all those traps before I went for this expedition, because I knew the results and the risk involved in that. And I answered those tough questions during my meditation so that they won't stop me. So I was mentally prepared for those situations.
Well, I bet your wife is happy the next challenge is a run on the ground, right?
Yeah, I think that sometimes you have to choose your battles. I wanted something bigger, and sometimes you go with intensity, sometimes you go with what you want to do, and sometimes budget is also important, because feeding a family and sometimes gets hard to have that much saving.
So how did this experience change you, and what did you learn about yourself? I'm sure there's so many insights along the way.
Climbing Everest was a huge undertaking, physically, mentally, and financially. I felt very proud after waving the flag of Canada along with Saint Amand and Royal Winnipeg Rifles flag on the summit. And the biggest thing is, after seeing the cosmic size of Everest and getting the aerial view of the world from 30,000 feet, gave me a better sense of sizing up problems in my life. And I used the gain momentum to fuel new and bigger challenges.
What could be bigger than Mount Everest?
I think bigger challenges, we all have our own Everest to climb in life. There are challenges which people don't understand. We all go through it. And the big lesson I learned is not all the physical and mental limitations are real. Through self-discipline and commitment, we all have the power to pull the impossible.
Absolutely. I firmly believe that as well. Dalip, that is so insightful. I want to thank you so much for your quick reply to do this interview. I know that there's a lot of wisdom that comes from this, and from people hearing your story, they can learn so much. And if anyone wants to support your Wounded Warriors Challenge, I have put the link in the show notes, and I'll put it in the YouTube as well, so that they could donate, because it's very important. You can't do these challenges without raising funds for somebody else. So my last question is, can you give some final thoughts on why it's so important to raise funds for disadvantaged groups like Wounded Warriors and St. Amand School?
I think as a responsible citizen, I feel it is my moral duty to contribute to the community and the country. During Mount Everest climb, I raised funds for St. Amand Foundation to help provide resources and tools for individuals we support. And now I'm raising funds for Wounded Warriors Canada to honor the fallen and support the ill and injured soldiers, veterans, first responders, and their family affected by war and peacekeeping missions. My appeal is to raise $5,000, and all proceeds will go to help ill and injured soldiers, veterans, first responders, and their families in need. And through these runs, I'm simulating the physical adversities which they face during those conditions. So I think there is a very solid reason, as I said in my whys, that why my drives, it's a duty to respond to this, and contribute to the community.
It absolutely is. You're a model citizen, Dalip. And I want to thank you so much for sharing this experience, because there's so much more to it than just you hiked up Everest. There's the whole preparation that a lot of people don't understand is behind it, the whole reason why you did it, the whole reason why you're supporting the wounded warriors. So we look forward to helping you promote what you're doing and to see you raise the $5,000 you need to support wounded warriors and to follow whatever challenge you set up in the future, because I know there's going to be many more, right?
Yes, that's true. This is just the starting point, you know. I want to pick my battle and I want to get it harder and harder and take it to the next level and engage the community in a healthier way so that, you know, people can learn that it's possible. You know, don't hide from it, don't run from it, embrace it, and create a system in your body where you can feed all this negativity and, you know, grow out of it and face it.
You're a model citizen. Thank you so much, Dalip. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate that. It's a pleasure to to be here today.
Wonderful. Well, we'll see